Good evening. Thank you so much for staying with us. Tennessee Voices for Victims, you guys have started or you're working on a new program following mass violence incidents. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. You know, unfortunately, every time you turn the television on, it seems like there's some kind of violent event that impacts, you know, a large number of people. We've had it in Tennessee. We've had several in Tennessee. You know, we've had it several in Chattanooga. We've had two of them here in Nashville, and just with the last few years, with the Waffle House and the church shooting. And Valerie and I just felt like, with that happening, we needed a better response for the people that are impacted by the crime right immediately. Not a second thought, but a first thought. And come to find out, there's a national movement to do that very thing. And so we contacted people in the federal system that controls the federal monies here and wrote a grant. And our concept is that we're going to pull people together to create a template of such on how to incorporate victim response into the protocol when there's a mass violence response. So when something happens and the police activate, then they will also activate the advocates that have been trained and ready to respond and ready to take orders and ready to help with the situation.
It's sad that we're in a day and age when we have to have a team like that ready to deploy.
Yeah, it really is, you know, but I think it is a reflection of just where we are. And I think, you know, kudos to Tennessee for recognizing the need to put some money behind an idea of pulling people together so that we'll be ready, honestly, most likely when this happens. You know, unfortunately, we have moved beyond if this is going to happen or not. And we just want to make sure as advocates and as people who are serving the state, and that's that committee as a whole, that we are doing the best by those who will be impacted by that. We do not want anyone to have their life destroyed, have this huge outcry of all the things that happen after a mass violence event, everything, you know, from the political scene on down to just the personal devastation, and then just have that kind of go away. And so with this this advisory council and with this project, we're going to have the opportunity to just make sure, you know, we're not interested in recreating the wheel. There are wonderful agencies who are already, you know, they have great protocols in place in terms of responding to the actual scene itself and neutralizing any threats and those kinds of things. So it's not really looking at that piece of it. It's really looking at the impact of it, of how do we make sure that after that threat is neutralized, that the people who are directly affected are being served the best. And so, yeah, it's just really exciting to have that opportunity to get to do that.
You know, we hope to identify victims victim advocates across the state who are willing to be trained and for us to collect the information and know who they are and to actually plug them into. There's already a response team with the FBI. So if it's an FBI event, they have a team that's going to of victim advocates that are going to respond. But if it's something major, that FBI is going to need a larger team to support what's going on there. So we want to make sure that everybody understands, you know, these are the people that are qualified to do it, and they know each other and they can trust each other when something like that might happen. And if it happens, you know, you think about all these communities, some of these smaller communities, that's, you know, especially in Tennessee. I loved small towns in Tennessee. They are just amazing. And if something happens like that, that's going to be their friends and their neighbors, and most likely they're going to know many of those people, and they're going to need to have input and support.
In addition to victim advocates and volunteering, you guys are a nonprofit, so you have to raise money to continue helping victims. You have a license plate in the works?
We do. We do have a license plate, and actually Nashville artist Phil Ponder designed it for us. It's a very simple plate, and it's to remember people that we've loved that have died. And it could be from homicide, it could be from suicide, it could be that you have a child that died of an illness. But, you know, we want people to have a way of expressing that heartache, and that we're going to remember what happened. And so we need to have 1,000 people step up and say, yeah, I want to help you with that. And it's not, it's like you pay the, whatever the specialty tag is, $37, and then it'll be a reality for all Tennessee. But we have to have people help us.
But you can go to our website at www.tnvoicesforvictims.org and learn more about the license plate there and how to sign up for it and those kinds of things.
Interesting. They could see it on the screen. They pulled it up there.
Yeah.
So that's great that you guys are finding that outlet to do that. I want to bring us back a little bit to this new program in the Juvenile Justice Center, probably because it's new to me and it's so interesting that this pilot program is going on. From y'all's experience with these juveniles who haven't really developed their full brain potential yet, meeting with the people who they victimized, are you guys seeing within the first year of this pilot program any type of results?
I think it's too soon to see results, but I can say that there is impact. There's impact, especially on the victim, because in the criminal justice system, for these lower level cases like robbery and car theft, the victim's not going to receive much of anything except frustration.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people don't really recognize. You know, there's so much of our world that's built around Law and Order and CSI and all of these other kind of crime and justice shows. And, you know, a crime happens and they go from crime to having a conviction all within about 40 minutes. And, you know, people just have this idea that that's how the world works and that their voices are going to be heard and that, you know, all of this energy is going to go into hearing their story because, you know, their world came crashing down. And at the end of the day, the criminal justice system is filled with wonderful people who don't get paid nearly enough, who are there because it's a passion of theirs, but they are overworked just like everyone else. And their energies have to go to the crimes that are those higher level. And by higher level, what we mean by that is that it's a threat to the greater community. And so that's why those energies go behind that. So when you're talking about this lower level stuff, when you're talking about theft or property crime or, you know, as I said, even car theft, it's just there's not enough significance. It's not that it's not significant for the individual. It's just that the time and the resources aren't available to help meet every single one of those victims' needs. And so to have individuals who are able to sit down, facilitators who have been trained, who can sit down and say to a victim who's had their car stolen and maybe spend 3 hours hearing all of the impact of that. You know, hearing how they saw it being taken out of their driveway and that they were inside their house with their family and the fear, you know, that was around that. That's just not stuff that you're going to get when you're in the criminal justice system itself because there's just not time to do it. So, you know, though it's really early in this pilot project, so to know, like, you know, is recidivism really being affected, or do we totally know that juveniles aren't coming back into the system? It's just honestly too early to give long-term results around that. However, we just know that the victims who have participated are expressing a satisfaction with the program, and they're talking about, you know, justice in a very different way. When you talk to victims who go through the criminal justice system, a lot of times what they will say to you is there is no justice. You know, there just isn't, because what they want is their life back the way that it was prior to the crime happening, including if it's just their car that was stolen. You know, what they want is peace of mind. They want to be able to know that they can park their car in their driveway and go inside their house and not ever look out a window and see somebody, you know, breaking into their car and driving off in it. That's what they want to know. They want to know that they're safe and that they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And so when that isn't happening, the next best thing that we can give to them is an opportunity to voice it, and to be able to voice it to that youth, even though that youth, you know, they're young, obviously, that's why they're juveniles. Their brain still, as I said, has not been fully developed yet, but they're teachable, just because all of us are teachable. And so for them to sit there and be able to talk to a mom who wasn't able to get their child to practice because their car had been stolen, well, they get that. They get that because they have a mom and they've probably tried to get to practice at some point and they weren't able to get there, or they would know what a hardship it would be if they didn't have a car to do that kind of stuff. So it just makes it real. It makes it real in a totally different way.
Makes it human.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it human. It's no longer a mark or an opportunity. It's a real live person that I've impacted.
And the victim feels like they get to express themselves. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We do have a caller who was hanging on. Ron, appreciate you. Thanks for staying on with us. Do you have a question for our people here tonight?
I just have a comment for each of you. I was one of the guests on your show the week before Christmas. You are a great host. To Valerie, you and I were co-workers at an agency on Broadway, and now y'all are right down the street from I'm at the fairgrounds now. And Mrs. Wyatt, I remember the story of what happened to your sister-in-law very well, since I had relatives right next door and a few doors down where that happened. And right after that, my mom decided to move from that area because Germantown then was not what it is today.
Yeah, that's true.
So thank you for News Channel 5 for having this show, and also to Tennessee Voices for what y'all do.
Well,
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I remember that voice. Someone called in and I was like, I think I've had him as a guest before.
Yeah.
Obviously, people remember, how you and your family were impacted, and someone having to move from a neighborhood just because of that crime. It's hard.
That's the ripple effect of crime. We think one victim, one offender, but both of those parties are impacted, and it ripples out. The ripple effect for the offender goes on, the ripple effect for the victims go on. I mean, even to neighborhoods. They were living in the same neighborhood where it happened, and they didn't feel safe anymore. That's what happens with crime, and it's very devastating.
And I think that's the part that, when we talk about it, and it is hard, I think, a lot of times for victim advocates to understand why would we want to go and work with the people who have caused this pain. And we want to do it not so much because they deserve it, but because every single one of us deserves it. When we treat each other humanely, when we treat each other in a respectful way, we are much more likely to get results. And honestly, the results that we want is for people to come out of these facilities and never cause that kind of harm again. I don't want any other neighbor to feel like they have to move because of something devastating that happened 3 doors down from them. I don't want whatever happened to 3 doors down to ever happen again. And so the only way that we're going to be able to ever do that is to help people understand that your actions really do have an impact. And the reality is this: when we can help people understand that that they're putting into action something that they cannot undo, and that the people actually have names and faces and stories, suddenly it changes a little bit, because what they want is what we all want. They want people to hear their stories. And so when a survivor comes in and says, well, you know what? When you came into my home and you did this to me, this was the impact in my life, and my neighbor then had to move because of that. Suddenly, it's not just a nameless, faceless entity. Now this is Betty. And Betty has children, and Betty could be anybody. And Betty is now personalized and humanized. And so the idea, hopefully, just is that when that individual comes out, that they're not going to repeat that.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. We do have to go to another commercial break, but please call in, stay with us. We'd love to hear from you.